Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Pristak here at the Jewish Center. I coordinate the Great Minds Salon program, and I'm very excited tonight to have Eleni Litt as our presenter. It says Eleni the Doodler, so I want to find out what that means. So we will have questions at the end. We will leave plenty of time for a question and answer period. And if you would, it's limited to send to me and as the host. And I will ask the questions at the end, and I'll make sure to give whoever is asking the questions, I will give you credit for asking them. So I have a feeling that a lot of you already know a lot about Eleni because it seems like we've got a lot of friends here. But I'm going to read her biography to those of you who are not that familiar with her. Eleni Litt is a teaching artist and a longtime member of the Jewish Center and its library minion. She is the artist in residence for the Athena Advisors, a consulting firm working in social justice. She teaches at the National Havurah Committee's annual Summer Institutes, at Limud, and locally at the West Windsor Arts Council and the Princeton Adult School. She has certification in fine arts from the Parsons School of Design and creative arts therapies from the New School, as well as a PhD in social anthropology. She is about to retire from the New School, where she works as Associate Provost of Faculty Affairs. She shows her work in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. And it is indeed my pleasure to welcome Eleni to the Great Minds Salon at the Jewish Center. Eleni, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It's really great to be here. You know, when Ellen first asked me if I wanted to give a presentation, I immediately said yes, because I love to share my work. And then after I hung up the phone, so to speak, I realized it was called the Great Minds Salon, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm just a doodler. The great niece of Purimspielers, who ended up on 2nd Avenue in the Yiddish theater, and then soon thereafter on TV, on, you know, Cops and Robbers show, Cowboys and Indians. And I live with a wise man, or a wise guy, who calls himself an haaretz, you know, a yokel. So how could I be anything other than a doodler? But all kidding aside, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to share my work with you and to share how I've been encouraged to study Talmud. And I'm going to share with you today artwork, which is a kind of visual commentary or a visual midrash on some Talmudic texts. And my remarks will be really in three sections. So first, I want to say a couple of words about midrash, what midrash is and what visual midrash is. And then I'll say something about the piece of Talmud that, I don't know, I don't want to say it inspired it, because nothing is very obvious when you're in the process of it, but a piece of Talmud that somehow stuck on me. And then third, I'll share some pieces themselves. So here we go. Midrash. What is Midrash? Midrash, many of you know, is a rabbinic mode of interpretation. It's rabbinic commentary on text. And the word midrash comes from the Hebrew word drash, to seek, to inquire, to learn. And it involves reading and studying texts in partnership with other people to discern meaning at so many different levels. There's the acronym of Pardes, which is an entry point into different ways of interpreting. So we have a simple way of understanding text. We have symbolic ways, we have mystical ways, and then we have ways that are maybe secret and not accessible to us. But what's really fascinating, one of the many things that's really fascinating about the midrashic process, is that it never replaces the original text. It emerges as a text in its own right, and it sits side by side with other texts over time, where conversations happen back and forth in time and space. So traditionally, Midrash is all about words. So visual Midrash, my friend Ron would call it a retronym. That's where you get a word like Midrash, and then suddenly you put visual in front of it. It has the meaning that the commentary is also visual. But here's the thing, what's visual Midrash when the second commandment prohibits us, in its most narrow definition, from making art altogether? Some of you might be familiar with the series Shtisel. Yeah, Shtisel. And in this show, there is one of the characters is Akiva Shtisel, an Orthodox Jew who makes art. And it's really kind of challenging in his community. But in the most broad understanding, the making of art is okay as long as it's not representational and you don't worship it. It's not representational and you don't worship it. Well, the whole study of what the second commandment is maybe a great topic for another time. For the moment, I can rest assured that my work is not representational and there's no danger that you're going to want to worship it. You might like it, that's okay. Now, this is a kind of joke, not joke. It's a kind of, a self-deprecating, playful thing, but what it hides really in plain sight is the remnants of the tender feelings of a girl, that would be me, who attended Salon Schechter, the first Schechter in Philadelphia in the mid-1950s, a girl who loved Jewish text and also loved art. But at Salon Schechter, art was Narishkeit. And then in high school at Akiba, where our Rabbi Mera and I went to the same high school, art was Narishkeit. I mean, no one really called it that. They didn't really call it that, but it just didn't matter, At Akiba, art was in the basement. There were no windows. So visual Midrash is a commentary on a text, and it's really, the wording has become familiar, but even a generation ago, it was an oxymoron. I remember at the NHC, someone was doing a workshop on visual Midrash, and it was, very new sounding. So those of us who are visual Midrashists have joined this thousands-year-old conversation. And we didn't wait for anybody to decide what the second commandment meant or didn't mean. And we also didn't wait to be invited to the table. We just pulled up the chair and sat down. So my visual Midrash is not illustration. So let's just get that out of the way. I'm not making cartoons, although there are some wonderful cartoons that can be made. And there's a lot of wonderful art. I mean, just look at Rembrandt that, represents and captures stories in an illustrative way, in an illustration way. But maybe my work is illustrative of something else. In a technical sense, you might say that my work is like data visualization, taking the pieces of the Talmud as data points and somehow translating them into line, color, and form. But the data points are conceptual and philosophical rather than part of a storyline. In some respects, it really just doesn't even matter what you call it. But people do ask me what it is that I'm doing, and I want to be respectful of the question and find the language to explain what it is. So what I'm going to be sharing after I tell you a little bit about the Talmud piece is not only the work itself, some work, but also the process of making it. So that's about Midrash. If there are any burning questions about Midrash or comments, this would be the time for them. Could take just one or two. And if not, I'll go on. I can't really see, so I can't see all the little boxes. But if someone wants to say something, they could use the raise the hand.
I'm not seeing any yet, so.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Then I'm going to just go on. And yeah, wonderful. So turning to the Talmud and the Talmudic text, for those not familiar, the Talmud is a commentary on the Mishnah. And there was a particular text that grabbed my attention. Some months ago, as part of the Daf Yomi project, and the Daf Yomi cycle is a 7.5-year cycle during which we read a page of Talmud daily. And at the end of 7.5 years, one actually finishes this. I'm not a consistent daily daffer, but I do live with one. And so I'm lucky to stumble on any number of pages that are really worth digging deeply into. So a couple of months ago, we read in Masechet Ta'anit, it's a tractate called Ta'anit about Jewish fast days, about a character named Honi HaMe'agel, Honi the circle maker. And we encountered him first in Ta'anit 19, and then in Ta'anit 23. Now, there's a lot I could say about Honi, and there's a lot of stories about him. But the thing that grabbed me about Honi is that he appears on the scene as an outsider, maybe even a magician or a kind of sorcerer. And he shows up in this conversation where the community is trying to figure out what to do because of a drought. There's a drought, it's not raining, and it really threatens their livelihood and their crops. And so the standard approach is, for dealing with the drought, I mean, what do? You take a sacrifice and you go to the temple. That's what you do. But Honi had a different approach. Let's say an out-of-the-box approach, allegedly based on this unique relationship which he had with God. And what Honi did was he stood in the middle of the courtyard, and he stood up and he drew a big circle around himself. And he says to God, I won't leave this circle until you make it rain. He was very demanding. It was probably much more shrill than I'm doing right now. He just ordered God to make rain, or he just wouldn't leave the circle. And amazingly enough, God actually responds to him, but in a kind of drip, drip, drip way. Like, it's not enough rain to really do anything. It's not even enough rain to have to clean your glasses. It just was, little drips. And so then what happens is a kind of Goldilocks story. Honi says, come on, I need more than that. And then the rain really starts pouring down. So you get, too little, too much, not enough, that sort of thing. But what happens is that Honi is initially portrayed as this outsider, demanding God. I mean, who demands from God? And in fact, when he first appears on the scene, or at least seems to first appear, because he does appear at other times, one of the rabbis, Shimon ben Shattach, says to him, if you weren't Honi, if you didn't have this special relationship with God, for sure, you would have a decree of ostracism. That's what you hear. There's this one line, just hiding in there in the verses of the Talmud. And within quite a few pages, not only is Honi fully embraced, but suddenly he has children and grandchildren who are rabbis. I mean, it's really kind of amazing when you think of it, how transgressive he was initially and how he ends up being embraced by the tradition. So this really engaged me, this notion of what is it to be so outside and then maybe, let's say, culturally appropriated, just brought right in. So here's a silly, not silly, silly, not silly example of this. I don't know, those of you who remember the New York City subway strike in 1980. Okay, a show of hands. Who remembers that strike? I wasn't even living in New York, but in Philadelphia, that strike was big news. 33,000 members of the Transport Workers Union walked off the job for 11 days. Now, if you were a woman working in 1980s, you wore high heels, okay? And if you didn't, I don't know where you were working, but you wore high heels. When the New York City subways went on strike, what started to happen? So women were walking to the subway back and forth in their heels. But at some point, someone got it in their head, they could like wear sneakers. And so they took off the heels and put them in a bag. It's a silly, not silly idea, but eventually, and in Philadelphia, we're walking back and forth with the heels in the bag. Then you figured out you could leave the heels under the desk in your office. So pretty soon you had like 10 pair of heels under your desk because you were never going to wear them at home. And then what happened, there was that day when you got to work and it was like, well, why bother change? Why put on, like I'm comfortable as I am. And that's when the casual shoe industry exploded. And it's a silly, not silly idea story, because it really was something that initially was kind of way out there in terms of professional dress. I know it sounds like a dinosaur story, but it was very real at the time. And it certainly impacted us, as far away as Philadelphia, how we dressed and went to work. So here we have Honey. I'm more interested in Honey than in heels, but I wanted to sort of, I can't even say that it was intentional, really. It was this kind of playing around where the canvas became like a chavruta partner. And really what I was doing was making and then figuring it out, which is really, if you think about it, it's not a seven nishma, right? It's not a seven nishma. This is, we were taught at Mount Sinai, do it, and then you'll figure it out later. Do it, then you'll hear. You do it first, and then you see what's happening. And in a way, that's kind of how my process works. And I'm not unique in this at all. So many of my fellow artists, some of whom are here, my beloved Chavruta Susan and Neely and Heda. This is how many of us work. So I think at this point, it is time to show some images. Now, I could have shown you the images first and then talked about them, but I just kind of thought it'd be good to have a context. So any questions or comments before we start looking at stuff? And I'm going to show you actually 3 little bodies of work. I'm going to show you a canvas, and then I'm going to show you what I call collage sketches, and then I'm going to show you the book. So I can wait, I'm not uncomfortable with the silence, just in case anyone does feel like saying something, that's fine. And then there'll be time at the end also.
Not seeing any in the chat, Eleni. If there's someone there who wants to ask it themselves, if okay with that, they can open their mics and ask.
Sure. All right, well, I'm going to carry on, and then we'll have time later as well. So, all right, so let me start. I will share my screen, and we are going to see the canvas. So here is, let's see if I can make it larger. Okay, can everybody see that? Thumbs up, because I can't see you. Okay, great, Ellen, that's wonderful, thank you. So this is the first canvas, and we see black and white, and gray with collage papers that look like little houses. And these are the study halls. These are the study halls. They're floating in some kind of indeterminate space. For me, they're floating in the color hall, in the colors of the study hall, black and white. But have a look, they're constructed with papers from a Jewish calendar, but certainly not a Jewish calendar that any of the rabbis would have seen, because you can see that the writing is in Yiddish, and it's really a calendar from Brooklyn. I get a lot of mail that was forwarded either from my mother or my grandmother, and so these study halls are made from the calendar. And so for me, these study halls are in an indeterminate space, and they incorporate time, and they're recreating Jewish time and space. That's what the Talmud does. That's what the studies hall does. And in the study hall, the temple still exists, and the pilgrimage festival still exists. And for me, this is the Jewish space-time continuum. It's Jewish physics. And then we see this round circle. We see Honi. Honi's on the outskirts of the study hall. He's present, he's not intruding, he's silent, he's waiting patiently. We know he's silent because there's no cartoon bubble coming from the red circle. Well, maybe that would be for another time, a different canvas. We know he's patient because the circle's kind of static. It doesn't have any energetic movement. Now, to be clear, the patience is my interpretation, because in the text itself, Honi is, like a crazy man. He's just very demanding, loud. I picture him as very loud. Honi begins to have influence. He starts to touch a study hall, and his influence starts to spread. The rabbis begin to take notice of him. They can't not do that. And from being an outsider, maybe even a sorcerer, the rabbis start to take him seriously. And eventually, his influence starts to not only impact the study halls, but his presence has turned into energetic teachings. And I think that's the end of that series. So I'm going to stop share for that series and get us into the second one. Now it's a little counterintuitive to go backwards, but because, and I'm sharing screen again, and my boiler went on, so there's a little hum in the background. There's nothing wrong with the speaker. So here are some of the initial, I call them collage sketches, because really these started with, I had some leftover paint and I just slapped it down. I was doing something in black and grays, and I got a credit card, just slapped it down, and then I don't know why I pulled out the calendars, but I think I probably was looking for like when candle lighting was, and I found the old one. I found the 2020 calendar, and I was looking for the 2021 calendar. So I don't know. I can't really explain it. I just started cutting it out, making these little houses. I added some blue. I thought that might be interesting to pop it out, but it didn't. It just didn't mean anything. It was just Narishkeit. But suddenly, and they're lying on my table, and I was playing with something else, and I just put this red dot there. And I think it was like a week later that we read about Honi. And it just was kind of like, okay, that's a thing. Let's see what happens. So those are some of the sketches. There were many more. I'm going to stop share from that. And the reason I showed you the sketches is because they're very loose. They're just loose and playful because if the work is too, for me, if it's too planful or too prescribed, then it's not only not any fun, it's definitely not fun. It also doesn't work. That's the thing. You have to kind of follow the energy of the piece itself. So it's a piece. So now we get to the pièce de résistance, if I can find it. That's really silly. Oh, I put the book itself. This is the book. I'm going to show you images, but just so you can get a sense of the size. It's a 5x5 book. It's the Book of Honi. And there will probably be any number of books of Honi until the rabbis decide which one is redacted for the next canon. So here we go. Let me share my screen again. And I might, well, before I share it, I mean, this all might sound kind of confident and whimsical and all of that, and it is confident and whimsical, but at the same time, you can't imagine what it well, maybe you can, some of you can imagine what it is to be an outsider as an artist, to feel like an outsider, to feel like a Honi, and also as a woman, as a girl at Schechter, well, the Kibo, I was the only girl in the Talmud class, the only girl in the math class. What it takes to actually say, not knock, knock, please let me in, but like, hey, I got something to say. It's, I don't take it for granted. It's still very much a part of the story. So anyway, here we go. Here's the cover of the book. And I'm going to show you, there's different versions of it depending on the lighting. But you'll see that this cover didn't have the Jewish calendar. It has a dictionary page. So the dictionary pages, and I like to have them sort of cockeyed. And that's intentional because they're not meant to be read. And it's not like I'm looking at the dictionary to figure out what word to use. I mean, even I myself stumble on things. But the dictionary pages are from my mother's dictionaries. My mother collected dictionaries. And we all know what it's like when our parents, pass on and nobody wants anything. They don't want the books, the kids, no one wants the furniture, no one wants the dictionaries. I kept the dictionaries. So this is the back cover, and adulteration. Now, I did not adulteration. So maybe some of this Midrash is transgressive in that way, but honestly, I was not looking at the words. Now here we have the first spread, where we have the study halls. There again, this indeterminate space. I love this. It's a flat space, but it also has some dimensionality to it, I think. And look at this. Really, I think, can you see these words? I think the world was made for one. I mean, it just fits this story. To flow before. I don't know. I didn't even notice that until just now. The world was made for one. Okay, here we go. The next spread, well, I guess we have the cover again with the dots on the side. I thought I had these in the right order, but here we go. There we go. That's that spread again. And then the next spread, Honi has appeared. Honi has appeared. You can't make this up. On a footing of equality with nobles. I just noticed that right now, honestly. So Honi is on a footing of equality with the rabbis. I can't make this up. Established a foothold. I'm getting the chills here, really, because I never look at the words, but because they're so large on my screen, I see them now. So that's very, very interesting. Honi has appeared and we turn the page and Honi is kind of everywhere. The circle is very open, broken, but still open. And here's another advancer. Honi is an advancer. There's that word. There's a word there. So this is kind of fun. Just seeing, because I'm seeing the words now much larger than, you know, what they are when I look at the, you know, 5x5 book. So that makes this presentation also new for me. Now here we go. And Honi is really expanding his presence. He's fruitful. His work is fruitful. And he's a good man. There he is. And finally, Honi is really totally, I actually love this page. Honi he's branched out. He's become rectangles and triangles and all kinds of other shapes. And there he is, a force to be reckoned with. And there is the book itself. And I think that's a good place to stop sharing my screen. And yeah, and take it from there.
Are questions allowed?
Yeah, you know, Ellen, it's fine with me if people want to use the raise hand and
Absolutely.
good.
I think it would be lovely for them to be able to ask themselves. That would be great. They could-
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. So I see one hand and I'm going to get that in 1 second. I'm just going to share with folks who are unfamiliar with this, that you go, you know, to the bottom of the screen where it says reactions, and you can click on reactions and you'll see that there is words that say raise hand. And then they automatically just appear in the order. So you don't have to worry that I won't see you. So Rabbi Mero is first. So unmute yourself, and my fellow Akiba graduate.
So actually that's where I was going back to, which is, have you spoken at Akiba or now Barak since as an artist, to go back like for the days where they invite people who do great work to come back?
Not
great
recently.
What?
Not recently, but I'm happy to share my work with my Akiba buddies. Sure.
And then I feel like the kids should see what they can do with Talmud and with
Wonderful.
art.
Maybe you and I could go down and do a joint thing there.
Nice. And then do you teach this kind of midrash to teens? And
I do. I do a very loosey-goosey organizing. I do doodle hashavua on occasion and Rosh Chodesh doodling. But if you have something in mind, we can.
Yes, we have a whole Hebrew high school here that which is why Ellen and I are still at the Jewish Center, and I want our kids exposed to your art. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Mero. Thank you.
So Eleni, if I could interrupt for a minute, Ziona originally was the first one to have her hand up. So if you could let Ziona go next.
Wonderful. And I will. And then Rabbi Mero, if you could lower your hand, I don't know if I can do that, and that'll be less confusing, but if not, no worries about it. Ziona, please.
Where did you get the word or the name Honi? Is this the same Honi for Tu B'Shvat Honi Hamahagel.
Yes, it's Honi Amegel. It's Honi Amegel.
It's the same, so you
It's the
use that
same, it's
concept.
the same Honi. It's Honi Amegel who begged for rain, who also woke up and didn't recognize his own children and grandchildren and his own legacy. There are many stories about Honi. And the one that I honed in on, oh, that's a bad pun. Someone's gonna like
It's
that.
a good one. It's a good
Yeah, it's
one.
a good one. Thank you. I think, yeah, the one I got stuck to was the rain, the making the rain. But yes,
Well, he was planting trees and showing that to his
exactly,
so that's what made me think of it.
exactly.
And also, I was at Akiba too, as
That's
the
right.
principal.
That's right.
But I
That's
don't
right.
remember you girls.
We were in a different generation. We're three
Yep.
generations represented here. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Tiana. Okay, Susan Kaplow.
So I'd like it if you could say a little bit more about, you quickly went over the phrase, I have a chavruta with my materials. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. So just to interject, Susan is a beloved Chevruta partner of mine of over 10 years. And God willing, one day again, we'll meet in the Metro Diner at 86th and Broadway. 100th and Broadway. What am I talking about? Anyway, you asked, did I say more about this process? So the way I work is, I've got, I don't know if you can, well, you can't really see my studio, but I have things lying around. I have a canvas over there, I have a book over there, and I'm working back and forth. It's a particular body of work. There's a different body of work where I work representationally. I go outside, I try to draw the flower. I draw it again and again, it gets better. I draw a tree, I draw a Neil, I draw people. But that's a separate body of work from this work where I'm playing around. I'm actually playing with colors and shapes. And then I remember, oh, Susan and I studied about the when the Torah was given and the Israelites had crowns, right? Susan, we spent weeks talking about crowns. And it was like, well, what do these crowns look like? So suddenly I'm going back and forth to the journal and I had, maybe I plop down some circles and I look at them and I don't know, it just suggests crowns. And then I pursue that. I hope that answers the question.
Well, we could say a lot about that. So it's a very good start.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's this. Thank you for asking, because it's not like I say, oh, I'm going to make the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, with the crowns. I mean, what would that look like? But when I start messing around, oh, that looks like a mountain. Oh, those crowns. It just happens like that. And then it will sit on the table for a week and I'll do something else. And then I've got to do the laundry and I've got to, start getting the paper for the taxes ready. I mean, that's really how I work. And then I come back and it's like, oh, crown, ding, 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 ding. And I follow the energy, the process of when you're studying with the Chavruta, you are inspired by their energy. So the canvas, the page, it's the energy is the page. It's, obviously it's not an audible dialogue. Sue Gulak. Thanks, Susan. Yeah.
So I just was tickled by your using calendar pages as we were studying Moed.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, thank you. And tell folks what Moed means.
Moed is the section of the Talmud that has to do with the calendar and all the holidays and when they fall and what we do on them. And so I think it was a great Midrash happening that you were caught in the words of the dictionary, but I kept saying calendar pages, Moed.
Exactly. I mean, it's stuff like that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's see. I see. Okay, Rabbi Mero tells me that when she went to Akiba, she was an art major. Oh my God, art major. Wow, that's fantastic.
That was the difference in a couple years, or more than a couple years, right? A little bit of time that they did bring in someone who had that kind to teach those
Oh,
kinds of stuff.
We had an art teacher. I graduated in '69. So we had an art teacher, but anyway, it was in the basement and there were no windows and I don't remember anything from it, but we can compare notes on that. I saw a hand. I saw Phyllis. Is your hand up, Phyllis Weisbach?
Yeah, my hand is up.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm really intrigued with your, Naaseh, and then your Nishma, which I think you said. I just want to really clarify that you had done the design and it had come out of you, and it had a circle on it, and you didn't even hear about Choni till after that.
I
And
think
then-
so, because I looked at the date on it. Where are the sketches now? I can't find them. Yeah, here they are. Yeah, and it was earlier.
So, so that's just amazing. I
Well,
really,
that-
I just love it. Yeah.
And it's I tried to write up notes to sort of share the process, but even I get mixed up. I have to sort of look at so I look at the journal and I do write dates. It's like when I start something, but Tanit was after that. It was way after that, because as I said, I'm slopping down I have this leftover black, white, because I wanted to start a canvas that was black. I was painting with black a lot because I thought black was really a beautiful color, and there was so much nurturing in winter and being in, working with blacks and grays. But then it just, slap it on the page and the houses and and then it talks to you, so then it's there. It's sitting on the table and it's like, humans are meaning makers, right? As an anthropologist, I didn't have to become an anthropologist to figure that out, but humans, you want to make meaning. Whatever you encounter, it's like, well, what does it mean? So these things are sitting on the table. And then we study Ta'anit and, and you put it together and you don't know what you're doing. It's a different kind of work than doing someone's portrait, which is also wonderful work, but it's just a different process. And it is magical, really. I myself, when when this little book is blown up on the screen and I found his footing, that's like, that raises the energy. And if you raise, as the folks who study with me, there's a couple of my students here, if it raises the energy, you just follow it because, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Siona, did you want to add more?
No, I just
Oh,
can't
okay.
get rid of them with the hand.
It's okay. It's okay.
I have one more.
Please.
And I'm sorry if my dog's barking, but she is. At what point in your life, if ever, did you feel like you were not the outsider?
Oh gosh, what an amazing question. Well,
You're an insider in the Jewish world and in the Chabara world and in the Jewish world, but yeah, when did you feel that way? You were not
well,
the outsider.
okay, let's get on the therapy couch now, folks. In the intimacy of all of the people here, to be honest, I actually do feel like an outsider for a lot of reasons. It doesn't mean that I'm not an insider and an outsider at the same time. The way I think, I'm an academic and an artist. So already you got things colliding in space, in outer space. An academic, very deliberate kind of thinking, very organized, but you're also stepping back all the time and looking at things from the outside. That's what anthropology is, you step outside of your own culture and you go to another one, which I certainly did, and I fell in real deep. I went native, as they say. I lived in Greece for many years, spoke Greek and all of that. But outsider is not a bad, outsider might have a pejorative sound to it, but if we find another word, it's about multiple perspectives. And so for better or worse, I'm either blessed or cursed with really holding in my mind multiple perspectives on things. And a writer who wrote Woman Warrior, Maxine Hong Kingston, is that right? And she said, growing up as in San Francisco as the daughter of Chinese immigrants, she said she had to hold in her mind, she had to have developed the ability to hold in her mind two totally contradictory things. And I think that's part, outsider again has this pejorative sound to it, but it's really that ability. And, when I went to Schechter, I mean, we were in, it was just a bubble, a Jewish bubble, then going in and out, so I was like living in an Irish and Italian Catholic neighborhood outside Philadelphia going, I'm rambling, Rabbi Mero. It's a great question. I love the question, and I'm happy to talk about it some more.
Okay, let's
But
talk.
I guess the short answer is I've never stopped feeling like that. But it's not a bad thing.
No, I agree. I think it's really an important thing.
Something like
let's
that.
talk.
So thank you for asking.
Talk.
Judy Diamond, unmute and yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to phrase this question. What you showed us in your book and you drew, looking at it, if I hadn't heard you talk, I have no idea what it is your interpretation is, and I can put a whole different interpretation of it. Is there, so do you ever want your interpretation to be the one that we should all have? And do you write something or somehow make it known what the correct interpretation should be?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, Judy. Thank you. So I have maybe two initial thoughts. So this book, I kind of imagine doing it again and having words, so that it would be like a little storybook for maybe young people, and maybe it would encourage them to speak up, and it would encourage them to share their outsider idea, something like that. So yes, there are places absolutely where the making would benefit by a very explicit explanation. And so then the second thing is part of what you can see. I'm struggling for words, even though I'm such a verbal, wordy, talky person. It's very hard to translate it, what the experience is, but I need the image to stand on its own. It has to stand on its own, whether you read it the way I was going to say intend it, but you see, I don't work that way. I don't start with an intention. I start with something. So if you read this as the circle is entirely inside the house, then you read it correctly. The circle is entirely inside the house. Now, do you know that that's Honi sitting at the table with the rabbis in the study hall? Of course not. But you do, on some visceral level, know that Honi is inside the house, or this thing is inside the house. And you also know that this thing has surrounded the house. So it's a wonderful question. and among, in fact, Susan and Hedda and Neely and we were talking about this last week, like, do we want people who see our work to read it in a certain way? And the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes I want you to read it in a certain way. And then other times, and this is more my style, I'm sort of hiding. There's things I don't want. Now, Honey is not one of them. I mean, I think I would really
Yeah.
benefit, but there is work that means quite a bit to me about my mother and my father, you know, and all this stuff. And that's going to be hiding in plain sight, and that's fine. You know, I might share that in an intimate setting, but it's still, it has to hold its own though as a visual piece with its composition. Yeah, so those are some thoughts about, it's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that.
Thanks.
Yeah, Paul Menowitz, hi.
Hi, it's good to see you. First of
Likewise.
all, I love your artistic representation of Honey. I have a question for you for this group.
Okay.
Does your Honey have a message to give to us today?
Oy, yeah. Well, that's a great question. And you've really tapped into something I wrestle with, you know, as an artist, as a human, as a scholar, independent scholar is what we call them. You know, what do I stand for? And part of me, I don't want to like be a big shouter outer about it. I do think though that each of us has to find an entry point into an important debate. So the answer to your question is what I think Honey does come to teach is, you know, what looks really crazy and whacked out in one moment in time, over time, not only is taken into account, but just becomes part of the norm. I mean, that's, you know, just how human society evolves. And so Honey's idea, now, you know, nothing's resolved in the Talmud, right? I mean, we have the practices that evolve, that are more stringent or lenient, and we go with the lenient ones in this world, stringent ones in the world to come. But in this world, it wouldn't hurt if we were a little more tolerant of some wacky ideas. It doesn't mean that all of those ideas should be incorporated. So it's a great question, and it doesn't have the definitive answer, but it does point to being open to difference. Doesn't mean you have to embrace it, but maybe that. So yeah, what do you think, Paul? I mean, really?
I was looking
Yeah,
for
what do
you.
you think about that? I should have asked you that first.
No, let me thank you very much for your comment.
Okay,
It's very helpful.
All right, good. All right, I can't avoid my rabbi here. Why is Honey red? Okay, well, and I don't want tolerance to those on the wacky far right. Okay, so and then we have more questions from Jerry and Lily. I'll get to you too.
You can take other people's first. That's
No,
what I
no,
put.
that's okay. It's okay. Why is Honey red? You know, it sounds dumb. I don't know. I have to think about that. It's also a visual thing. It's just very striking. I don't know. It could be, and this sounds like I'm just goofing around, but I'm sort of not. On my lamp next to my computer, I have two baseball caps. Well, one's red and one's black, because when the sun comes in, you know, I can't see. So maybe black and red. I mean, honestly, it sounds like I'm just BSing, but I don't know. So I have to think about it. And then the other question that you put in the chat, which other folks can't see, so I'll read that. Where to go? Here to go. So Rabbi Mero is saying, I don't want tolerance to those on the wacky far right. Do you? Well, I don't know about tolerance, but openness is different. Like I need to understand, it's just for me, you know, I need to understand where certain arguments come from. I need to understand it. Doesn't mean I have to buy it or agree with it. Doesn't even mean that I necessarily want to talk to folks who have those arguments, but I do, it's just my nature. I want to understand, like, where did that come from? So that's kind of how I approach that. I don't know if that answers your question, and I welcome anything you might want to add to that, Rabbi Merrill, because you asked it. Okay. And we'll come back to that too. Jerry Kaufman, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, it's not really a question, but if you don't mind, I was kind of, as you were talking about Honi, I was riffing on it a little bit.
Okay.
And, I started thinking about his name, Honi Agil, and I started thinking, after what I saw you do, I was thinking his name today might be Honi Hamashpia, the influencer.
Huh.
Because he, you know,
Yeah.
he had those circles that were radiating out, you know, and it was kind of like he was broadcasting what he was doing, and it was spreading to others. And I was imagining Venn diagrams where he was intersecting with others, and anyway, just having fun with it.
Absolutely. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Lily Kaufman.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm now that we've talked a lot about Honi, I'm a little curious about the Batei Midrash.
Yeah.
And the feelings that you have about those structures, because they strike me as having elements of sort of solidity, and at the same time they're collages themselves of all these words, so they're inventive.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sort out, how do you feel about these rabbinic institutions?
Yeah.
That stand in opposition to Honi?
What a great question. Thank you. You know, I was thinking, so I'll stick it up to the camera. So there's one of these houses.
Yeah.
First of all, the dictionary pages and newsprint, I love working with newsprint and dictionary pages. They melt into the page. They're very insubstantial. And I started, this is a little roundabout way to the question. I started to do some research on, like, what did the study halls look like, right? And the study halls are these medieval, you know, they've got these complicated buildings. And the study halls I made are really the 1950s standalone houses that are, you know, Havertown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. I mean, it's the house that every kid in the 1950s, you know, you draw a square, you put a roof on it. I didn't put the chimney, you know, and so those houses, the study halls, you know, are based on the house I grew up in. Let's call it that. So my house was a study hall. What did I learn in that house? A lot of different things. I love the question. And it encourages me and I just have, the work continues to energize me. So I do see that there will be other books of Honi. And I think that in some of those books, I will find some template for the rabbinic study hall. I mean, I did find some images that I used for a piece that I shared with the Chavara folks some weeks ago about the idlers sitting around in the temple there are these idlers waiting for people to ask them to do something. And those idlers are sitting in a more realistic setting that was that medieval study hall. I don't know. Does that capture something of what you were asking?
I truly had no, I truly
Yeah.
had no idea.
But the question is so, it's a great question because it encourages me to think about my mother's dictionaries as houses, and what it is to enter my mother's house full of words, and then to stumble. I mean, it's, you can't make this stuff up, and then, stumble on a word that fits the story of Honi, making a foothold, force of nature. So it's delightful. It's a process. I'd still keep my day job, so to speak, because it's a strange kind of work. I couldn't sort of do that work 24/7, although maybe it's coming to that soon. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you for asking that.
No,
Hedda
hi, Eleni.
Kafka. Hi, welcome.
So your work, I've told you this before, but it reaches me under my skin. So I don't want to get hung up on any one symbol particularly, but I am curious, and I have my own feelings about it, but how did you decide to use the calendars that were Yiddish as opposed to Hebrew, as opposed to Aramaic, as opposed to English?
Yeah.
Well, you do use the dictionaries later on, but I'm curious about the Yiddish.
And there again, and I don't mean to sound coy about it, but that's what's around, like I just don't have any calendars from Israel. I have all these Yiddish calendars, and I have, the funeral homes, right? Every funeral home that anyone ever used in our family. I get all the mail from my father, who, my mother. So I get these calendars, and then my grandmother, who lived in Winfield, in Philadelphia, every guy came to every Thursday, they knock on the back door to give them, from all these little yeshiva shtibels in South Philly. So somehow they morphed into larger institutions in Brooklyn. They're just lying around. I didn't want to throw them out, Love a calendar, love a dictionary.
I get a real communal feeling from these. When I think of Europe and those shtetls, I get a real communal feeling.
Yeah.
It can either be inclusive or exclusive.
Yeah.
So that's what we.
Well, that's the tension, because these study halls, they did not welcome women, and they didn't welcome artists. So here we are. We're there. We're in that study hall. Yeah, thank you. I'm mindful of time. I'm okay to stay a few more minutes. I think Tiona has a question. Do you?
It's just a kind of a statement question, but I love the fact that you used the word Honi, because Honi is really a futurist. He is planting for the future, and therefore the name and involves other futures for other ways of planning for the future or planting for the future.
Both. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, thank you, Tiana. And the way your little Zoom box looks, it looks like you have a gold star, right? Because the way the raised hand and the light, does everyone see that?
I don't know how to get rid of it.
It's either sunny side up, ready for breakfast, or it's the sun.
High, it's high.
It's good. It's all good. So Ellen, how are we doing for time? If we have any more questions, should we take them?
If there's, actually, I have a question.
Oh, please,
So
yes.
It's going to be a little bit more of a practical one. I love your technique. So my question is more about the art.
Okay.
What do you use? Acrylic ink? Is it ink on paper?
Great question. Okay.
And then paper cuts?
So I work in water-based medium. So everything is water-based. I gave away all my oil paints. because they're not sustainable and all that good stuff. So everything is water-based, and it's a combination of acrylic and acrylic ink. And I also use clear gesso. So let's say I do something in charcoal or colored pencil and I want to paint on top of it. Then I have clear gesso, because then when I put stuff on top, it's not going to be reactivated. With the back page of the book, you see there's like a very shiny, you see how
Yes,
shiny
yes.
it is?
Yeah.
So that has a lot of layers of glossy matte medium, because I really like that shiny look for the back of it. And the inside of the book is more, it's just a plain matte, so it's not shiny.
Matt.
So I do make decisions about, how to do that. This is something called Posca pen. It's like an acrylic pen that gives you can, use acrylic as if it were in a marker. But everything's water-based and everything is layered. There's lots of layers. So things, and what I love when things look random. It looks like, oh, she didn't just slapping stuff down. Because if it's too patchkid with, if it looks like too much effort when it, when you go to a play or you see a musician and it just looks effortless, there's something that it has a great energy. So I like things to look like they're slapped on down and random. And sometimes they are random. Like I think those random looking lines give you some dimensionality. It puts that house a little bit further back than the storage bin, or what I'm calling a storage bin.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a little bit how I work. And
I love the technique. There's
you.
the red circles, are they is that paper cut or painted?
Yeah, so the red circles, thank you. Yes, it's all cut out. It's all cut out of red paper. And I have started to use, like, aside from newsprint, which I love, and the dictionary pages, separate from that, I do use other archival papers that, are a little bit, they're more durable. But once you put medium on them, they last forever.
Great, I love them.
Mhm.
Thank you. So yes, I think it probably is time to end this wonderful, Great Minds Salon. Yes, I see hands going up. I love your work. I love that, I teach at the Jewish Center and I've taught about Honi HaMegel for years. And, to the children and about the rain and about the trees. And it just, for me, it brought us a different view. And I can't thank you enough for doing this. I knew when I decided to ask you, I was asking the right person.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And I'd be happy to talk to your class if next time you teach.
Oh, that would be lovely.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll definitely be in touch.
Eleni, since I'm new, has your art ever been shown here?
Yes, I had a solo show at the Jewish Center in 2013. Actually, 5 months or so after my father died and after our beloved Jim Diamond died. And that show was really, an opportunity to share that work that was influenced really by both of them. My father as an artist and Rabbi Diamond as a truly beloved teacher, and made Talmud come alive. Yeah, there's been a lot of work since then. And I'm in a lot of shows throughout the Northeast Corridor and different places, juried and group shows and stuff like that.
Well, thank you. And I mean, what I want to actually say is I'm new, so I'm an outsider here, actually. And wherever you're the inside, I'd like to be in that crowd.
Thank you
you are.
so much. That's Very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. It's really been it's really been great to share this with each of you. And Ellen, thanks a lot. I don't know if
Thank you.
I'm a great mind, but I had a great
I
time.
think so. I think
Thank
so.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know everybody enjoyed, and I just want to wish everybody, good health, stay safe, stay warm. We have another Great Mind Salon coming up in March, so look out for that. It will be Dr. Jeff Israel, a professor at Williams College who teaches about anti-Semitism. That is, I believe, March 23rd, but you'll see it in our bulletin. So thank you, everyone, for being here
Also-
tonight.
Also, a way that you can express another part of your artistic self
Yes.
is through comedy.
Right.
and through film. So even if you're not a member of the Jewish Center, you're welcome to be part of our Purim festivities, my favorite holiday. We are asking people to make not a TikTok, but a shtick-tock. So get your best shtick together and make a 30-second to 1.5 or 2-minute video. We've gotten some great ones so far. Like, make fun of yourself, make fun of Talmud, make fun of the world, have a good time. And also join us for Purim night, also on a Wednesday, the 16th, at the Jewish Center or online after the Purim festivities, after the reading the Megillah, which will be beautiful, I'm sure, no doubt. We will be having an adults dance party outside in the courtyard with vodka with Vashti, Mordechai's mocktails, stuff to eat, places to dance, and then afterwards, I am personally hosting at the diviest bar I could find at the Ivy Inn on
Wow.
Nassau Street, an after party with me to celebrate Purim, to let the celebration continue. It doesn't matter. I don't care members, Jewish people, just come and celebrate. And even if you don't want to come for Megillah reading, just come to the party.
That's
Send
great.
us your TikTok.
Okay.
And before we sign off, I see that my husband Neil it's just a quinky dinky, as my stepdaughter would say, for coincidence. Neil, you're wearing a t-shirt that has a picture of my father on it. If you could just show that. It's when my father was 8 years old. You have to, my father was an artist, and he's the one that taught me how to, there he is, like 8 or 9 years old in his winter coat. My father's the one that made all these t-shirts. So, my mother's dictionary is my father's t-shirts. We have them all. Thank you, Neil. Thanks everybody for coming.
Hey, good night, everybody. Stay well.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Fantastic.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.